Welcome to another episode of The More You Know. Today I'm joined with Brendan. Brendan, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm a second year IT student from South Africa. Yeah, and I'm just your average quintessential geek nerd. I like science, I like computers, I like games, just the basic stuff.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I know for myself, I've been in technology since I was probably 13. Like I've always kept up with what's happening in the console wars, phones until I was like 16. When I was 16, I built my first computer, and that's when I started getting into computers and all that. Tell me more about your IT background and what you're learning about.
Well, interest in tech first started in 2006 when I got my first PlayStation. When I got my first video game console. It was a PlayStation 2. In my opinion, one of the best video game consoles that were ever created. And from there, that's what got me into gaming. I got my first laptop when I was 11 or 12, and but when I really started getting into tech was like earlier I messed around with a little bit of HTML stuff like that, like hit F12, edit a website to make it say whatever I wanted to say, go prank my friends by making their Facebook pages look weird, but that's only on my end. And then in grade 10, 2016, I had an elective in high school, which was IT. So I could take programming, which was a lot of fun. And I took it originally because I thought, hey, I like video games. I can become a game designer. Let's do IT. Let's learn programming. And eventually I learned that that's the wrong perspective to have. But I still developed a huge love for programming and for tech in general. So then I just carried through with it. Now I'm second year in my BSc course.
Take me through the high school courses that you guys having down in South Africa. Is it mostly like is there a lot of tech oriented classes? Do you guys offer tech in your curriculum a lot?
Well, no, it's only specific schools. Like and the way it's set up, we have four mandatory subjects: two language, Afrikaans and English. Then we have a life orientation that's supposed to prepare you for life but doesn't, and then we have math. And then you have three electives. That's standard in most high schools. Like unless you have a private school, then it's a bit different. Now from there you can pick depending on what the school gives. There's a lot of options. Most schools give computer literacy, which teaches you stuff like Excel, how to do Word like a pro. But IT is the advanced level where you actually learn programming on top of that. Originally, the schools offered Java, and some schools still do, but because of government mandate, now they have to teach you Delphi, which, in my opinion, is a very bad language. Like, I would much rather have learned Java as a start.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Java and all those are like very essential to modern jobs. I know that my school taught us HTML, which was nice at the time. It did get your foot wet in the programming world, and it kind of helps me out nowadays because I use Word, so I can do some hard coding myself on my website whenever
Yeah.
I do need some of that. What is Delphi?
Delphi it's basically C sharp but dumber. And there are some things about Delphi that I will acknowledge that are pretty decent, but only from a beginner stand. Something that you need to know about is variables. Variables are essentially little buckets that you can put information into and you can store it. But you need to specify what's going into that bucket. Is it going to be text? Is it going to be a number? If it's a number, is that number going to have a decimal point? And if you want to, let's say you have a number, you did a lot of math, now you have a number, and you want to show it on screen, then you have to convert that number to text. In Delphi, that was easier. There was a thing built into it. The command was int to string, right? You wrote it int to str, and then with the brackets and whatever you wanted to convert in there, and it would do it. But there is a problem with that. If you try to feed it something that it doesn't expect, it can break everything, and there isn't a way in Delphi to really protect against that. Like Delphi is a very, I don't want to say a dumb language, but it isn't. There's not really a way to make sure that every edge case is covered. Like in most languages, there's something called a try catch, and what it does is it tries a bit of code, and if that doesn't work, it catches the error. Instead of crashing your entire program, it catches the error and just displays it and says, hey, something went wrong, but the entire program doesn't break, which is very handy.
This kind of reminds me of Python, really, because Python is really like straightforward. You Like I feel like if you presented Python code to anyone that was not a programmer, they could probably get a gist of what your program is trying to do because the syntax is just so clear and
Yeah, it's something that's a problem, like for programmers. Well, it's not a problem, but you can make very advanced stuff with stuff like Python. But Python is what is called a high level language, which means the way that you type the code is essentially in English. Like it's very human readable, but you can't really do much down to the metal, like very specific commands, like at the very base of the hardware. Like in some languages you can manipulate the fan speeds of like your CPU. The fans in your computer, you can manipulate how fast they're spinning, like how much power you're giving to them. You can, I don't know if you've ever heard of a Raspberry Pi.
yeah, yeah. I've contemplated and doing multiple projects using a Raspberry Pi.
They're pretty cool. It's for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially a very small computer, a, a, about 1.5 times the size of a credit card, and it has these golden pins on it, and those pins can output electricity, and you can manipulate how much they output. And a lot of people use it. Like I know someone used it to set up a downloading base, and those LED, he wired LEDs into it to show the progress of the downloads, right? And some people make a media center of it, and it's such a variable tool. But for that, you need to be able to program a bit more to the metal. Like you need to be able to say, hey, you need to give this much power to this specific prong, otherwise it's not going to work. And that's not something you can really do with high level languages like Java and C Sharp. And Python is a bit more low level, but it's still pretty high level. And also something about Python that I love Python as a language, but it's infuriating. In most languages, it is standard practice to, after any line of code, you need to have a semicolon, and then that's your way of telling the computer that's the end of that line of code. You don't do that in Python. You can't do that in Python. The program won't work. And I cannot tell you how many times I've written a few lines of code and then realized, oh, I need to go back and erase all of these because it won't work.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how like one like semicolon or colon or comma can just wreck your entire code, and then you find out later on, and then you just get angry because it's just one minor detail.
For anyone who wants to mess with a programming friend, right? Go into their program, find any line of code, and replace the semicolon at the end with a Greek question mark because they look almost identical and it will drive that person insane.
Oh my god, that's like the ultimate troll. I
Just a bit
can't
of a
believe
pro tip.
that.
No, I've had it done to me, and I was I was starting to pull my hair out because you look at the thing will tell you in which line of code the error is, right? And you look
Mhm.
at it and you know there is nothing wrong there. You
Oh
know
god.
it's right. Yeah, it's pretty infuriating.
Yeah, I definitely feel your pain on that. With your background in coding, have you made any apps by yourself?
I mean, yeah, I do. I'm currently working on one for. It's gonna sound almost sad, but I'm working on one for my mom. She recently took over my grandfather's business, and it used to be her, my grandma, and my grandpa working together, and now she's alone there. So I'm working on a program to help smooth out some processes for her, so she can focus on other stuff. Ease the workload a bit. And
Yeah.
I've programmed a lot for fun to see what I can do, like try and make Snake, in the game that's on all the old Nokia phones. Yeah, I have done. I mean, it's something that any programmer does. It's just mess around in your off time. You don't try to write good code. You just try to write something fun. There's a wonderful word for this. It's called budging, and it just means you just slap something together because it doesn't have to work permanently. It just has to work once, and it has to work right that one time, and then it's over. Like then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, take me through the process of getting like an idea to reality. I know that I always come up with ideas of like what I would want in like a product or what I would want in a app, but how hard is it to construct a idea to an actual working program?
It is almost impossible to get exactly what a person wanted. Because I'm going to take this from the perspective of you approached me and asked me to build you a specific app. right? And the app can be super, super simple, but there are so many steps involved. And the app might seem simple. Like, if I can reuse an example, it's an app that when you press a button, it counts from 1 to 100, right? Now,
Mhm.
that seems very basic, you know? That doesn't seem hard. Now, that to facilitate that, you need to create, first of all, a button that just causes it to execute, right? And you need to write your code in that button. And you need to have some sort of text field where it gets thrown, right? The numbers as they go, as they count. And there isn't any program language that you can just say, hey, count to 100 and print it. There's a syntax to that. Syntax is the shape of your code and the order in which things need to happen. So what you'd use there is called a for loop, right? So a for loop is essentially something that says, hey, you need to run through this bit of code a certain number of times. So you'll have to set up a for loop that runs from 1 to 100 and prints those numbers. Printing, the term print just means put it out on the screen for the user to see. Right? And yes, that seems pretty basic, but now the user comes and say, hey, what if I want to tell you it can only count to a specific number? Okay, now you need to go back and modify that for loop so he can give you a value and it only needs to run to that value. Which means you need to create a variable for that, to like a bucket to store that number in so that you can look back into that bucket. And then he says, okay, what if I want to start at a specific point too? They say, okay, that's just another bucket with another number. And here comes the problem. And this is where what's called idiot proofing comes in. Because some user is going to say, okay, count from all the numbers between 90 and 80. And if your program isn't set up correctly, that thing's going to go 90, 91, 92, 93, 94 forever until the universe die, well, until the device runs out of memory space. Because counting up from 90, you will never reach 80. And that's something that, and it's such a innocuous small thing. And then you need to say, okay, but what if he wants that? What if he gives you 90 and 80, he wants you to count down, which means you have now basically two applications in one that counts up, one that counts down. So you need to go and look which one is it. So you need to have what is called an if statement. And an if statement just looks at a condition. So it says, hey, is this number bigger than this one? Do this. Is it not? Okay, do this other thing. That's breaking it down into simple terms. And your program can grow so fast just based on such a simple thing. And I had to create for a project, I had to create a point of payment system, right? And I had to use like a database where all the products are saved, all the suppliers of the products are saved, and it's in principle it's such a simple thing, but it took me over 1,000 lines of code to get it into a something that a state that I would call working. And there's still a lot of changes that I would have made if I had the time to build it up.
I know that when I took my intro to Python course and when I was building like programs of like what the professor wanted, like they wanted something so simple, but there's so much lines of code. And I'm glad that you talked about idiot proofing because and then you're just talking about the if statements. That makes me look at when people say, "Oh, wow, we should just make an app like this." I feel like it's not hard. But the thing that I think people don't get is that they think that an app like they think that everyone's going to think of that app like you're thinking of it. Like everyone's going to know what to do. But the thing about programming is that now that you kind of bring it to light, is that you have to think of every single combination that like an error could occur. You have to like like you said, idiot proof it. Make sure that if someone types in texts into a spot where it needs characters, we have to find a kind of like a false safe. I want to say. So what happens if this person puts a character in a text? Then you have to print a box that comes up and says, "Hey, you can't do that." But and then there's just so much that goes into it, and I'm really glad that you brought that to light.
Okay, look, it's always good. You need to assume that basically someone is gonna give your program or your app to a caveman, and you need to be ready. Your program needs to be ready for that. It needs to be able to take that. That's also why just now I mentioned the try catch. It's one of the most useful things because whenever you come to a bit of code that there isn't really anything you can do to make it safe, to make sure that it will work. You put it in a try catch, because then even if the user fucks up, it won't crash the program. It will just tell him, hey, listen, this didn't work. We can't do this. So you did something wrong.
The thing, yeah, that's the one thing that I'm glad that you brought up about software developing is that, yeah, you have to think of every single situation that the user could be put in, what errors they could make it really into layman's terms of like how of like what the app should be.
One of the most infuriating sentences that I've ever heard is, hey, why don't you just make an app and get rich? It's not that easy, because every programmer has thought of, hey, why don't I just make an app and sell it? It is not that easy, because think about it, every good app has already been made. Oh, an instant messaging thing, WhatsApp, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. There, it's a very saturated market for basic ideas, so you have to go into a niche. And another challenge for programmers, now that I mentioned the niche, is to see things from a user standpoint. Like, I always make sure I have at least one friend or one person in my circle that doesn't know tech, so that if I make something, I can give it to them to test, because it's so easy to fall into a pitfall of, hey, I understand this, and then you give it to one of your tech buddies and they understand it. But as soon as you give it to someone who isn't in tech, who doesn't know technology that well, who doesn't do programming, they'll look at that app and they'll go, what, how does this work? It's so weird, it seems backwards. And yes, it might be the best way to do it. Well, okay, let's say the most efficient way to do it, but it's not the best way, because the average Joe can't use it.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. TikTok is something that I'm really surprised really broke out because I feel like everything was really saturated. I feel like Instagram held the video and photo social media, and YouTube. Obviously, I thought that was going to be like the king of like video creating, but when TikTok came out, I was really surprised. Like
Well,
like
I can see the appeal. And this comes from someone who, I dislike TikTok with a great passion. Um, there's it started with Vine. Like, I'm not even
you
sure
didn't like Vine?
Vine introduced. I know, I loved Vine. Vine
Oh,
was the
okay, yeah,
apex.
yeah.
It started with the Vine, and here's the thing: YouTube is good for videos, like long videos. Video game let's plays, video essays. These contents that like around 10 to 15 minutes that you can digest. Instagram is pictures. They had that, but the short video, like the 6 second video, it was revolutionary, because it forced people to think differently about comedy, and some of the best memes in existence came from Vines. And just and most of them were accidental, just someone recording with their friend on Vine, and all of a sudden you have the "I could have dropped my croissant" guy. And I quote Vines on the daily, just because it was iconic. And then Vine died, and it left this hole. And then the next person to step up was a few years later was Musically. Instagram immediately jumped onto the video train to try and fill that void, but it didn't work. And then Musically came along, and Musically was even worse than TikTok. And then TikTok managed to grab some of that Vine market. And there is still a market for short, quick, funny videos. And yes, there is the very, to use the word now, a cringe side of TikTok, which just the people lip syncing, the people trying to act pseudo depressed, and act as if they're suicidal, act as if they're Holocaust victims. That's just it's bad taste, and it's dumb. If people try to be funny or actually try and show their singing talent, that's a different story. But people just doing repetitive dances, that's kind of stupid.
I mean, for me, I feel I'm a big fan of TikTok. Like, I can get lost watching TikToks with my girlfriend for like hours on end. But the cool thing about TikTok is that like there is so much of like there's different niches that you can get yourself into. So if you're into video games, there's a TikTok community that the search engine will recognize that you're just watching TikTok videos about gaming, and it'll put you against those. And that's something that I find pretty cool. But the thing that with TikTok,
Right, I will say I am generalizing when I say I hate TikTok. Like, I mean, it's always the case. Like there were bad Vines, there are good TikToks. It is generalization, but the content itself isn't the only reason why I dislike TikTok. And I think this might be what you're about to bring up: the
I was
privacy
going to talk about
issues
privacy. Yeah,
with TikTok.
yeah. Walk me through some privacy stuff on the back end of it.
It blows my mind how little people care about their privacy. Just to go off on a quick.
Well, I feel
Go
like
ahead.
for a lot of people, because like they think that Facebook, all the big tech things that people use on the daily, they're already taking your information. So I feel like people are just like, well, they're taking it already. Why not let them take more?
Okay, let me tell you something very scary. Even if you don't have a Facebook profile, Facebook has a profile for you.
How so?
Like let's say I don't have a Facebook profile. I unfortunately do because you can't delete profiles anymore. You can only deactivate them. But let's say for the sake of my mic, I didn't have a Facebook profile, right? So Facebook will go and say, "Oh, my mom just mentioned her son Brendan. Okay, let's go see. Oh, she doesn't have anyone on her friends list with that name. Let's catalog that. Okay, let's look in mutual friends. See. Okay, hey, this is a photo with 7 people in them from a mutual friend. 6 of them are tagged. One of them isn't. That might be Brendan. Oh, here's another picture. Same criteria. Those two faces match. That must be Brendan. And they build this profile on you every time you were mentioned. Every time they see someone talk about you, your name, and just they build a profile on you, and you can look at this. You can go onto Facebook and see. I can't remember the exact steps. You have to Google this for yourself, but you can see if you don't have a Facebook profile what Facebook has on you, and it's scary that they do that. Because here's the thing: most people when they sign up for Facebook, they click "I accept the terms and conditions." I never clicked that. You didn't click that. But they still gather data on you that gets leaked via your friends that have accounts. And TikTok, just giving all your data to the Chinese government to do with whatever they want. And I know most of it is harmless. Like most information gathering and data mining is harmless. It's mostly just for targeted ads. But it's the principle of the thing where I can't decide what happens with my data anymore. I can't decide, hey, listen, I don't really want some random company to know my name and address. Like,
Hmm.
I don't really want that. Call me crazy.
I mean, yeah, I don't blame you because during the election right now, I'm getting random texts from all these like parties just telling me, "Hey, don't forget to vote. Don't forget to vote." Like, yeah, I'm bombarded with that enough on ads on like YouTube. I don't need random people texting my phone right now, and that's one thing that really annoys me because of like I didn't give anyone my phone number, but I know that my phone number is probably being sold through marketing or something.
It's big companies that's like I said, for Facebook, and this is something that people need to hear. For Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram, you are the product.
Yeah.
Because the more people they have, the higher. First of all, the more people they have, the higher their valuation is. Like the more valuable they look, and they can sell your data. They sell their data at like this isn't an accurate number, but let's say $1 a person. Facebook has millions of users. That's millions of dollars just coming in. And this person changed their address. Guess you'll have to pay me again to get that. You are the product to these companies. They want to gather your data to sell it to other people, so those people can target you with ads.
Have you watched the Social Dilemma on Netflix?
No, not yet. It's on my watch list. I'm working my way through some other things first.
Yeah, I definitely recommend watching it. Like what you're saying right now is what that documentary goes into deeper. Like they go into the deeps of like how Facebook does it, how all these social media companies take your data and go through the algorithm and the AI that they have that collects the information about you and kind of dumbs it down and gives you a good representation of like what's happening in the background.
Yeah. One of the biggest companies that make me angry about this is Apple. And
Why?
not only they sell your data, they don't even bother to protect your data to a reasonable degree. I mean, think of all the iCloud hacks that has happened in the past. Just it's screwed, but the fappening as an event was because of an iCloud hack. The whole thing, I remember in 2015, everyone was going insane. I think it was 2015 because Jennifer Lawrence's nudes got leaked. Like, oh, it's J-Lo's nudes. Like Jennifer Lawrence's nudes. It's her. And they're like, and she, of course, no one deserves to have that happen to them. Like, that's a huge invasion of privacy. That's it's not a nice thing to do to someone because you just put their entire private life on display, and it's a scummy thing. But you can't just put the blame on the hackers. Because if Apple, and if it only happened once, that would be a different story. But there have been multiple iCloud hacks. Like hundreds. I mean, it's been confirmed. Siri sends all your conversations. Siri records you almost 24/7 and just sends your conversations along for Apple to do with what they so desire. And I don't understand why people keep praising Apple as this good company because they're okay from a business standpoint. They're a fantastic company, but from a consumer and a tech standpoint, they are garbage, and they have been for years. When they started, they were good. I won't deny that. The Apple II, revolutionary, great stuff. But right now, they're not a good company. They're not. They don't make good tech. They don't care about customers.
there's there's parts that I do agree on you with this part. Well, I think you shouldn't blame Apple completely for the iCloud hacks because realistically thinking, everybody can get hacked. Any company, any even like the big tech giants like Microsoft, they got hacked. Sony, their PlayStation Network got hacked for like a couple weeks, and that was down. But like, I feel like Apple, like, they're all the same. They're all kind of similar. They're like, there's always going to be a flaw in some program. There's always going to be a flaw somewhere, and these hackers are bringing them to life, and they're doing malicious things with that hack, which I don't think is good. Like, none of it is good, but that is good for a company to acknowledge the flaws that they have, fix it. I don't like, for me, I can't remember if Apple immediately shut down the network or anything and patched it up, but it reveals flaws, and that gives engineers in the future to think about what could potentially happen. And secondly, yeah, and what you're saying about Apple Tech, yeah, I do agree with you. Apple Tech in the past couple years has been pretty shitty. Like, their phones have not been revolutionary as much as people wanted to. The only selling point that you get is the cameras. Like, their screens were supposed to be rumored to have 120 hertz, and I know that the Samsung phones have had that for a while, but I feel like when Apple is delaying these features, I feel like they release it in the modern day better.
First of all, just to quickly hop back onto the iCloud thing. Sorry, my brain just went in a completely different direction. To quickly pop back, if it only happened once, right? That would be fine. I wouldn't. That would be understandable. Like, okay, listen, you fucked up once. It's not the end of the world. That's an
Mhm.
understandable mistake to make. But it happened I mean, there's been I think there's been three happenings that all have been due to iCloud compromisations. And secondly, on the subject of tech, you know that Apple's the Retina displays, right? They're made by
Mhm.
Samsung
Yeah.
and sold to
Yeah.
Apple, which means a lot of Apple's quote unquote revolutionary tech isn't even theirs. It's made by a different company and sold to them. Apple has been creating subpar tech for and way overpriced. If they just made subpar phones and sold them at retail at normal prices, that'd be fine. But they way overprice their phones and the tablets and the iMacs and all of that stuff. They sell it at insane prices for tech that you can get for so much less. Like, and the audacity with the iPhone 12, the audacity to remove the charging block and the headphones to quote unquote preserve the environment. That is bullshit, and everyone knows it. That is a very blatant cash grab because now they're going to start selling those separately in their own separate wasteful containers instead of just including them with the phone. And we all know the first part of the phone that breaks is the charger and the headphones. It's not the phone. It is always the headphones. First one ear fails, then the other ear fails. The charger, it starts only working at a specific angle and then it doesn't work at all anymore. That's just how it works. And also, the cable that you get with an iPhone is a USB-C to Thunderbolt cable. Why not
Hmm.
just go to USB-C? Standardize. It's not that hard. It would make the entire world just run smoothly. And the last thing on Apple that I need to say in this sentence is they refuse cross compatibility. I know Bluetooth is a bit of an outdated technology, but I can't Bluetooth a picture to my friend with an iPhone. I can't send him a song that I have. I cannot plug an iPhone into my computer without having the fucking virus of a program that is iTunes on it. And it is a very, very bad program. And they refuse to build their stuff in such a way that you can actually conveniently interface it, unless they force you to have all Apple products if you want a single Apple product. Like the iPod. The iPod is great. I have an iPod Shuffle, the one with the tiny one. But I hate it because I need iTunes. I can't just drag music onto it. I need to install iTunes if I want to put music on it, which is such a backwards way of doing these kind of things.
Well, to talk about the screens, how they're made by Samsung, I don't know if this is still accurate or not, but I feel like I read an article back in a couple months ago saying that Apple was switching to a different manufacturer for those parts. But I also feel like it's so hard for Apple to upgrade the screens, especially if they're made by Samsung. I feel like since Samsung controls the patents and the manufacturing of the screens, that they're going and they know that Apple's the competitor, that they would definitely charge them a surcharge. Because why would? Because thinking about it, like why would I want to give my rival the same piece of tech that I have? And to also talk about the price, I do think that the prices are outrageous, but Apple does make their chips, their CPU chips in house now. So I think that's where they deem the value from. I don't know if the A14 Bionic chip is better than the A13 Bionic chip because I don't have an iPhone 12 and I don't have an iPhone 11 to benchmark those. And yeah, and the topic of talking about how Apple removed the charging brick and the headphones, I think the headphones was a good choice because I feel like everyone's switching to Bluetooth now. I don't really see many people now with wired headphones. What I do like that they did offer that for the people who can't afford those. But I feel like if you bought an iPhone beforehand, you do have those on hand somewhere. And there are other like alternatives that you can get, like skull candies, which are cheaper that you can get. And talking about the charging brick, yeah, I think it's pretty messed up that Apple completely misled everyone because the charging cord that they do give is a Lightning to USB C, and USB C. I feel like for iPhones only released with the iPhone 11. I'm not too sure on that. For me, I have not bought a new iPhone in a while, but I think that's pretty scummy of them. But talking about the current times, Tim Cook is a master of supply chain, and I can see why he wanted to reduce the weight of the box that it came in. I essentially making the boxes smaller and making the boxes lighter. You can fit more iPhones on a pallet, and it'll weigh less. So in a supply chain world, that will drive the cost down of shipping it
No,
to meet with demand.
you will never hear me deny. You'll never hear me deny that Tim Cook and the people at Apple are not good businessmen. They are fantastic businessmen. If you look at it from the point of they want to make a profit, they are brilliant. But I'm looking at it from the point of view of I am a tech guy. You will never see me with an iPad, an iPhone, or a Mac because it is inferior technology. For the price of a Mac, I can build myself a really good rig that outperforms that very same Mac. Like,
But
and it's a,
do you know
I
how
feel
hard
like
it is to make a
for what it is,
Hackintosh? Do you know
I,
how hard
for
it
what
is to
I also
make a computer rig that can run Mac?
well, why would you want to run Mac? That's not a question. Like, in my opinion, Windows is the better operating system, and if you really want a Mac style thing, get Linux.
Mac to me is very simple. it's a very simple interface. Windows can get really really annoying. Windows auto updates all the time without me telling it to. Windows is more prone to viruses because more of the viruses made are meant for Windows because they know that Windows dominates the computing market. Linux is something that's very hard to learn. I feel like a lot of people don't want to sit and learn code, learn learn the commanding lines of like what I need to type to start this program. Mac is a very simple one, and the thing that I do like about Mac for editing software, Final Cut Pro, GarageBand, Logic for the people who like to edit audio is very convenient, very easy to learn, and it's only on Mac. The simplicity of Apple and all of their software, I think, is where people buy the value from. And talking about the ecosystem now, they like the ecosystem where you can just pass on what you're doing on one device to another, which I think Microsoft is starting to get on that because I know that the Xbox you can play on your console and then you can stop and then you can play it on your PC and pick up where you left. But the Apple ecosystem is where people find the most value, I feel like. Because if they get a phone that can't connect to their HomePod or connect to their MacBook, that is a major inconvenience for people.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. Again, I want to. I'm not saying the interface. Okay, the interface on an iPhone is bad. That's gonna. I'll stick to my guns. That the interface on a Mac, it's not bad, but you can get more out of it. And interesting, if you're using it for just those basic things, there are free software. And here's the thing: most software, except for Apple proprietary stuff like GarageBand, most software is made to run on Windows and gets ported to Linux or vice versa. You'll be hard pressed to find a program that's like only runs on Linux and Mac. Like if it runs on more than one operating system, it's most likely Windows and something else. Because Windows is one of the easiest things to program for. Windows is open. Well, okay, Windows isn't open source, but I can
Mhm.
install anything I want onto my Windows PC. Like on a Mac, if they have restrictions, especially on the iPhone, they have restrictions on what you can get onto your phone. On my phone, I can install whatever I want. I can say allow foreign sources onto for installations, and I can install whatever app I want. If I see, oh, this obscure Russian guy made some app, I can get it, and I don't have to go through Apple to do that. I just get the app on my phone. Same thing for my computer. I can download anything, I can watch anything, I can go anywhere and do anything, and they can't really stop me, like because it's my computer, not theirs.
Well, don't you think that if you do download stuff that's outside party, do you feel like that is that could be a substantial threat to you and your privacy?
Not if you know what you're doing. Okay,
Well,
the
like
thing
there's a
is,
lot of
I'm
people
not
that
down.
don't
I'm
know
not
what they're
going
doing.
around. Okay, but those people also won't go diving for some obscure program. They'll probably just try and download a Facebook app, and Facebook has the download button for that built into their website. I'm just talking. Okay, for the average Joe, like I said, the average Joe might not notice these things when they go into their MacBook. For them, they might be perfectly content, and if that's one, that's fine. But from my perspective, and from the perspective of someone who loves tech and who loves to be able to, you don't. It's not that I need the freedom; it's that I want the option to do these things. I don't necessarily. I'm not necessarily going to go to a sketchy Russian website and download some app, but I know if I ever need to, that option is there for me because this computer app. Like Microsoft doesn't care what I do with my Windows PC. I can do what I if I decide, hey, I want to download every single virus known to man onto this computer, then I can. That I am free to do that, and that's what it comes down to. It comes down to our freedoms. Like a major corporation can't stop me from using my property as the thing that I paid for as I see fit. Apple can do that. Apple can remotely brick your phone if they see you doing something they don't like, and you can't get it back. If you try to jailbreak your phone, they can brick it for you. Like Apple doesn't care. Apple has Apple. Sorry, Android doesn't care. Like there are several rooting guides for rooting an Android phone because they don't care. If you brick your own phone, that's your problem. But if you want to break it open, then go ahead.
Where can our people find you?
Primarily, I also have a podcast. It is called the Total Chaos Podcast. It's a show I do with me and two of my friends. Just once a week, we get together, we talk about whatever happened that week and whatever else we think of that we want to talk. I worked hard to make sure that we're everywhere. Like if you Google the Total Chaos Podcast, we will be the number one result. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Zencast. You can find us basically anywhere except Pandora because that's a difficult process.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, Brendan, for coming on. I definitely enjoyed talking about technology because for me, I can talk about tech all day, but it's good to have someone who's been in the industry for a while now and knows like the background processes that's happening in our phones and how we the consumers are affected by the choices that the companies make and the difficulties of actually creating a idea to a reality for a application.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.